Memes are a part of our lives, for better or worse. Because of that, they can be useful in creating a realistic environment within stories. Sadly though, that's not usually what we end up with when we're introduced to them. A lot of the time they end up feeling out of place, simply just taking you out of the experience. I've talked about a few examples like this in the past, which I'll briefly go over here to get them out of the way. The most notable of these cases being Fire Emblem Fates, where in the English localization of the game they opted to change a cute scene of the protagonist's daughter telling her father "I love you" into the old cringy "RAR means I love you" in dinosaur meme. In a similar fashion, there are several cases within Triforce Heroes, just one of those examples being the appearance of the Doge meme. Like I said, memes are a part of our lives, so it could make sense in some cases to bring them into localization to create a realistic setting. But the key to that is our lives, not in some mystic fantasy world. I can't speak for everyone, but when I see something like this, it doesn't add to the game, it only breaks my immersion as I let out a groan thinking, why would they put this here? However, that doesn't mean a modern setting is all you need to make this work. In Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations, there are a variety, and I mean a variety, of pop culture references, to varying degrees of success. Some of the ones that particularly stuck out to me were things like referencing the Milkshake song, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and the Sparta meme. Despite that setting being based on modern times, they felt groan-worthy still, because given the context of the scenes and the characters, I still feel as if it's out of place. I think there is a way in which adding something like this can be used correctly out of place, as in a character attempting to seem hip and ultimately just failing. But that's not what's happening here. It's the writers who are attempting to be hip and failing, not the characters.
But I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
You can see this happen with games in their core releases as well, not just poor localization attempts. Life is Strange being the example that has stuck with me the most. Being pretty close to a teenage girl myself, I can say I know they say some pretty cringy things for a fact. But this game has a similar issue in that the attempts of making it realistic are poorly done. Characters saying things like "such sad," not sure why the Doge meme always ends up being the most popular when it comes to being inserted into media. But if you want to see this point further, you can look at the dialogue as a whole, the Dangoji Bud scene as one of many examples. I give the game props in that the setting and characters make perfect sense for the use of memes and cringeworthy dialogue, but the execution just came off as a hella poor attempt by out-of-touch adults.
Hella, dude.
Now, while plenty of out-of-touch adults seem to work at Nintendo as well, and are responsible for some of the absolute worst examples of meme usage, as I mentioned, I think they have also managed to create one of the better examples. Animal Crossing, for example, sets out to create a game world that reflects our own, in terms of interaction between people, or in this case animals. They want these characters to feel relatable, at least that's the impression I get, with actual hobbies, habits, and personalities. So it makes perfect sense when you see a character saying some meme or pop culture reference. Sometimes it can come off as cringy or dorky, but that generally fits their personality and what they're going for. The execution just feels natural, and a reference every now and then is barely something that feels out of place. It's as if you heard someone really say it in a conversation. However, we all know, as I alluded to earlier, memes and references aren't always used naturally. In fact, in the grand scheme of things, they probably mostly aren't. If you played Watch Dogs 2, you've no doubt noticed the memes scattered throughout the world as advertisements as well as posters. At first, this might seem like a horrible example of incorporating memes into your world, but in reality, if you've been to San Francisco, then you know this actually is a good representation of reality. There are in fact memes used as advertisements and posters all over the city, so while cringeworthy and hard to look at, it serves its purpose in actually replicating the setting. It's just as bad and poorly written as the real San Francisco is. You can see this within characters too. I've mostly been talking about the setting so far, but if we look at games like Steins Gate, especially in the character Daru, his manner of speaking and constant talk of 2D waifus is an accurate representation of the types of people I hang out with. Basically what I'm getting at here is character context and setting is the main defining factor for if memes and references can work within a story. But there is one case that's somewhat unique to each piece of work. While I've been talking about real world references and memes, meaning that settings having to emulate our world in some way is basically the first step in defining how appropriate the use is, it doesn't matter when we're talking about self-reference. As you know, sometimes games just create memes naturally, due to something being particularly funny or memorable, and future games in the series will sometimes incorporate it, maybe as a small Easter egg, or maybe something not so small. For example, Dark Souls 3 allows you to get the famous Praise the Sun gesture, by making it deep into Lothrop Castle, a place strongly related to the sun gods from Dark Souls 1, and finding the warriors of Sunlight Altar. Some other good examples I feel are in Color Splash, when referencing the Luigi Death Stare, or even the Sonic Generations reference within Sonic Forces.
It's been generations since I seen you.
However, the issue I sometimes have with these kinds of self-references is when it feels lazily implemented and not really justified. Dark Souls 2 just threw in the Sunbro altar, and the gesture that comes with it into some random corner of a poison swamp area. And while both times it's obviously just there as a nod to fans, oh hey, it's the meme pose. Dark Souls 3 puts it into the game way more naturally. I suppose where I'm going with all this is that I just like games as well as any other media to have a little more integrity. It can feel almost insulting when someone with no understanding or interest in online culture throws memes into a game just because, hey, that's the stuff the kids like, right? Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with trying to please your target demographic, but if done like this, all you end up doing is alienating them and showing how little you understand. So don't put excessive memes into your game just to have them. Or in the words of Monster Hunter's localization team, don't drive to meme country. That's it in the video. If you did like the video, please remember to like it physically. Support me here on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, whichever. Or if you want to support me further on Patreon, if you're so inclined. Thank you very much for doing any of that. So the only thing I really want to mention for this video is obviously I have talked about a few of the games in the past, Fire Emblem, Triforce Heroes, and that stuff. And they have quite a lot of examples that would work for this video, so I wanted to make sure I focused on other things and just kind of briefly mention them, because they are still important, I feel, because they are very good examples. So I do hope I hit a good balance there. But yeah, other than that, I think that's all I have to say for this video. So again, I hope you did enjoy it as I enjoyed making it, and I will be seeing you in the next video, which I have a few extra planned this month. Hopefully it'll work out if I can speed things along. So I will see you then, and I do hope you look forward to it. I'm bad at ending things, so goodbye.